Welcome, everybody, to the first, or actually the second ever live broadcast of The Light in the Darkness. Today, we are bringing on a couple of guests. One of them is a UK-based trauma healer, Maria McMahon. Everybody, to the first, or actually the second ever live broadcast of The Light in the Darkness. Today, we are bringing on a couple. And sorry about that, small technical difficulty. So without further ado, let's get started. How you guys doing? Can you see me? Oh, still having a little bit of a tough technical difficulty. No audio. Just 1 second, guys. For some reason, we're not getting any audio. How about now? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you we can hear you. Can you hear us at all?
Yes, so I can. Sorry, small technical difficulty. Getting used to somehow how this equipment works. So
No, I understand that. But you're on Facebook now. If I go to you Facebook Live, hold on 1 minute. Let me just refresh it. 1 second. Hold on. Let's see if we're all here now. Oh, there we go. We're all there.
there we go. There we go.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, everybody that's watching this, if you can take a second, we're getting, this is only our second broadcast. So me, myself, operating all this equipment, I'm extremely new to it, and I'm stepping forward into the unknown, if you will. So there's going to be some bugs, glitches, and stuff like that. So understand that when you're, watching these podcasts, these video podcasts, you are seeing people in real life. This isn't scripted. This isn't, anything that, we are, huge professionals out here. We're just like you. We're going through the traumas. We're healing through them. We're seeking professionals such as Maria. So without further ado, would you guys mind introducing yourself? Maria, would you go first? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can, but there's a delay or something because I'm getting double audio and everything.
It's gonna have a little bit of a delay to it. It's the broadcast delay.
Yeah, there's a problem here with the audio, Ken, because everything you're saying, I'm then hearing it again. So there's double audio.
Are you watching the
You,
video
but
itself that's being broadcasted, or are you watching me through the link that I sent you?
I can, just for the record, Maria and Ken, I can hear Ken perfectly, and almost the moment the words leave his mouth are aligned to the sound that I hear. So there's no delay, or there's no echo, or anything.
So everybody that's watching,
right,
watching
hold
this,
on. I'm going to
please give
shut
us some.
down the YouTube one. I'm going to shut down that link, and I'm coming back to here. Okay, maybe that's why. Okay, apologies to you guys. Apologies to anyone who might be trying to watch us. Okay,
That's okay.
right. Did you say
We're
you
all
want?
learning?
We absolutely are, and there's always technical issues like this, especially when you're doing a multi-stream platform and you're doing it with more than one person. So we've got 3 of us here. Okay, sorry about that.
No. It's all a learning curve for everybody. Can you hear me better now? Am I more in sync?
Yeah, I can hear you wonderfully.
Okay,
Brian, so that's all hunky-dory. So thank you for that brief introduction, but I just want to make a quick correction. So my name is Maria McMahon, which often people struggle to pronounce. I am British, but I am not based in the UK now. I live in Spain. Okay, just wanted to correct that. So do you want me to dig right into this whole world of narcissistic abuse and female narcissists and everything?
Yes, kind of bring to
Okay.
us, bring what you know to the forefront. Bring, let us know what it is you do, what your passion is about it, and how you help us men and others, in all these communities.
Okay, so I trained as a therapist over 30 years ago. I trained in NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which I still think is one of the best forms of therapy on the planet, and hypnotherapy. Over the years, I've developed more skills. I use a lot of inner child healing, which is also a core part of what I do. And I started working online about 10 years ago, but I got involved with narcissistic abuse, and I became very, very fascinated with it. And I just started literally swallowing, reading, watching everything I could find on it. And I became very, very, I just felt really aligned with it. It just clicked with me in so many ways. So I decided, and I also had two people it was two women at the time, who connected with me and said, I really need your help. I've been dealing with narcissistic abuse. And at that point, I knew what a narcissist was, but I didn't know anything like the level I know now. So I worked with these two women, and I found out that the techniques I use to help people to heal, from any kind of trauma, because I'm obviously trained to deal with, childhood trauma, sexual trauma, you name it, I know how to deal with it. So the methods I was using was working really well, and it worked really well for these women. And I decided not long after that I wanted to niche into that market. So initially I was working with women, which was fine. And I set up a Facebook group, as most people do. And quite often I would have guys trying to join the group, and I would always politely message them back and say, thanks for applying, but it's women only, and I can't allow men to join the group. And quite a lot of guys responded to me and said, oh, that's a shame. And, there's nothing out there. And if you do decide to set up a group for guys, let me know. So I said, sure, I will. So I started just keeping a list of these guys' names. And I ended up with about, 20, 25 names. And I thought, well, it's a small number of guys, but hey ho, let's just set up a group for guys. So that's how the Facebook group, which is how you both know me, that's how it was born. So it started, I called it Narcissistic Abuse Recovery for Men, and that name ever since I created the group a few years back. And it just started to grow. And as you both know, there's I think 3,000 odd members in there now. And got some fantastic guys like yourselves, got a great team of, admin. So we look after the group really, really well, because something else that was really important to me, having been in lots of other groups, and I still see this today, I still pop into and see what's going on. But what I saw pretty much uniformly across these groups is there's a massive amount of men bashing going on. And I really didn't like that. So I wanted to make the group a place where men could come and talk openly, get support, and not have any of this men bashing bullshit to deal with. The other thing on the opposite end of that is you also have the MGTOW brigade, which is the men going their own way. And to me, that's the opposite end of, the feminism, men hating stuff. And then you've got the MGTOW on the other end of it. I didn't want any of that negativity in my group. I don't want men hating. I don't want women hating. So the admin teams and most of guys like yourself, other really solid members that we have in that group, really supported that idea. So between us, we managed to keep it a really good, safe space that's really helped a lot of men. I'm really happy about that, because obviously I work with people to help them. I'm a therapist. I work with clients to help them heal. But the group kind of has a bit of a life of its own. I don't have to be in there every day. I don't have to be posting every day. I don't have to be showing up every day to know that the group is just ticking over nicely. Guys are always posting. They're always supporting each other. So for me, that's really important. Another thing I did, I've got a copy of it here, is I wrote a book called The Top 50 Red Flags of Romantic Predators. I wanted to really spell it out, because you'll both know this. You don't know you're dealing with a narcissist until it's way too late in the game, and you've been through a massive amount of psychological abuse, trauma, confusion, the gaslighting, all of the stuff we can talk about in a minute. And you're trying to figure it out. And one of my favorite quotes, I post certain memes that have a style. They have a picture down the side and quite a large piece of text. You'll have seen them. It's especially in my TikTok. Ken, I know you see mine. All those memes came from the guys in the group. They came from things guys in the group had said. But a lot of the thing, sorry, one thing that happens is you don't know and you go and Google it. So one of the guys, and I have, he said, I didn't know what a narcissist was until I Googled, why is my wife such a bitch?
That's why
And
I
it's
was.
funny. I have to laugh at it, although it's not funny but that's how a lot of people find out. They go to Google, they're like, why is my wife or my partner or my girlfriend so erratic or so jealous or so mean or so whatever. And that is how they kind of find narcissistic abuse, and they start digging into it and they're like, oh my God, she ticks all the boxes. And I've read probably over 100 books, at least 100 books on various aspects of narcissistic abuse and healing and whatnot. And there wasn't one that kind of just spelt it out. What are the big red flags to look for? How do you know that you're dealing with a narcissist? And it's a question I still get asked, and you'll see guys in the group asking it. So I wrote the book.
I know through all this, my biggest question, one, I was just like you just described. I did not know what a narcissist actually was. I thought it was the same thing as just calling someone a goober. I really thought it was just some name, something that, was thrown around loosely, and that was it. And then all of a sudden, when my ex-wife just disappeared after me catching her talking to a gentleman behind my back, I started talking to a couple of friends, and mind you, I'm still protecting my ex at this point. And they're like, Ken, this sounds just like a narcissistic abuse situation. I'm like, what the heck is that? And that's when I started looking for it. And that's actually how I found Maria. A year ago, I came to Maria in absolute, I wasn't just broken to pieces. I was broken to dust. And I could not make heads or tails of what was going on. My person left without any true closure and letting me know what was going on. I took the blame for everything, which generally happens. And me being the empathetic person I am, always working, looking to better myself, even through all my mistakes and all my traumas, I took the blame and I ran with it. Maria turned around, and I literally went through, I bet you 5 different therapists, different places, approaching each and every single one of them. Am I the narcissist? Am I the one that did this wrong? Is it me? But I'll tell you, the one that reached out to me the heaviest was Maria. Off to the side, she spent an hour with me on a Zoom call, and she really helped me that day. She really showed me that I am, more than enough. I am that guy that, always cared. And it opened my eyes to be able to start looking and seeing different little triggers or different things that were in her. And it happens, and that's the number one thing that, gets us guys. Because a lot of us guys, if you notice, when we set out to grow, it's a full-time job. We really attack it head on, and a lot of us, I'm finding out, are very empathetic, and when we give ourselves to love, we give ourselves to love, and that was the thing that got me. How am I such a bad guy? I always chose to help her. Even through all her traumas, I put myself off to the side and stood in the flames while I was burning, helping another person.
Yeah. And thank you for what you said there about, talking to me. And I'm so glad I was able to help. And I'm so super proud of you for how far you've come and for this work you're doing now and the plans you have to really the awareness. I'm really super proud of you, as you know, and you too, Brian. But, the important thing is that there's so many guys out there who are suffering and struggling, and they just are in that same boat. Is it me? I don't know. What am I doing wrong? And the thing that I've seen again and again and again, and obviously I've worked with a lot of men to help them to heal, is they're always really bloody nice guys. They are kind and empathetic and loving and giving. And, a normal woman, I've said this many times, would be just delighted to be in a relationship with this kind of a person, a guy who's decent and generous and kind. But this is the thing. Narcissists know what they're looking for, and they are looking for someone with those qualities, someone who they can use all those good qualities against. You'll be forgiving. You'll try and bend the rules to make them happy. All of these things until you've bent yourself so out of shape, you don't know what
you are no more.
is anymore. And who you are anymore, because loss of identity and of self is massive.
And the thing
Yeah.
is, in my case, my person kept projecting that back to me. I
Yeah.
caused them to lose themselves. I caused to do all
Yeah.
this stuff. And I found
Yeah.
out, and it was weird because I didn't, I've always thrived in psychology. I love psychology.
Yeah.
And I recognized certain little things across the line, or across the way of her projecting herself onto me. All of her mistakes, problems, she was putting them on me. And I'm sitting here going,
Absolutely.
wait a minute, how is this working? So I couldn't figure it out. And as time went by, I started trying to take and dig harder and harder and harder into helping her. And I was taking more and more blame. And I'm sitting here going, okay, is this her? Is this somebody else, getting in her head? How does this work? And I'll tell you, at one point, it really stunk because I was that guy that would have just burnt myself to the, to nothing. And it took me a while after meeting Maria and talking to her. I had to choose myself. I had to learn what
Absolutely.
self-love was,
Absolutely.
and despite how much I loved my person, I had to go choose myself because they
You
had
have
driven
to.
me into habits that were not me. And that's something I wanted to touch base on today a little bit, Maria. Is it normal for the victim to kind of take on some of the habits that the narcissist has, such as, kind of spiraling out of control? I mean, when they lose their identity, they kind of take on habits, it seems like, at least I did, that was not that person.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what they're doing is from the time they meet you from the beginning, they are manipulating you. So you are constantly moving your own personal goalposts to try and fit in with what's going to make them happy. And this means that you're constantly suppressing your own needs, your own feelings. Because if you try and explain how you feel or what you're thinking, or what you did made me feel such and such, what they'll do is they'll twist it around. They're fantastic with word salad, but they'll twist it around and blame you, as you've just said, Ken. And projection, I jotted down a whole list here of things I was going to rattle off that are common, that are part of the narcissistic abuse suite, for want of a better word. And projection, absolutely. They're always going to be, anything they do, they'll project it onto you. And even when you do something that's completely innocent, they have this just remarkable way of twisting it into something completely different. And
Yes.
this comes then dovetails into gaslighting, because they start gaslighting you, because you're like, well, you said no, that's not what I said. And you could literally have a recording of them. I had a guy message me the other day and he said, I have a recording of her saying this, and I've showed it to her and say, look, this is what you said. No, that's not what I meant. You've completely misunderstood this. And they will, in the face of absolute smoking gun, they will say, this isn't what I meant. This, and then you start thinking, is it me? Am I going crazy? Am I losing my mind? So then
Exactly.
you start, sometimes you can get quite angry. And then if you get even slightly angry, oh, then you're the aggressor, you're abusive. And they will be all over that, like, white on rice. It's unbelievable. And then you, and then you think yourself, maybe I shouldn't have got angry like that, or I shouldn't have said that. That's not me. So it's not that you're taking on the narcissistic characteristics yourself, but it's just like you're actually struggling to find a way through the fog to try and make some sense of it.
That
And
was
of course you get frustrated. Does
that
that
was
make sense?
yes, that was exactly me. After, I mean, it was like one day I walked, everything was fine, and then all of a sudden she was disappearing for hours and hours and hours. She was not really checked in, all those things, and I knew something was going on. And I started letting her, being the person I am, always wanting to grow. I started taking on the responsibility of it's me. It's me
Yeah,
because I know
yeah,
I'm not perfect. I know I
yeah.
make mistakes. I know I can get angry. I know all those things. So it is so easy for them to project that over onto you. And an empathetic person will take that responsibility.
Absolutely. Yeah, because
And
you think I'm not good enough. I'm not being good enough. I need to be more loving. I need to be more forgiving. I need to be more understanding.
yeah, and
So again, you're
mine would literally,
constantly,
mine would look at me and tell me straight, you're more than good enough. You always have been. And then turn around and do something on the opposite end in action to make me feel like I was less. Talk to
yeah,
to one of her exes behind my back, let them talk about sexual previous past and make me tell
yeah,
me I'm insecure for feeling disrespected and not chosen.
yeah,
And it was
absolutely. You
those
see,
kind of things.
that's a really good example as well. When you point anything out like that, then they very quickly flip it. Oh, you're insecure, or you're jealous, or you have issues. It's
Yes.
always your fault. You
Yes.
are always to blame. And then because they've eroded you and they've, worn you out mentally and emotionally and psychologically over time, because this is covert, subtle abuse over time, you then think maybe they're right, maybe she's right, and maybe it is me,
Exactly, and that's what
It's
I did for
such
a
a
year. After talking to
yeah,
you, I went back to her twice while
yeah,
she was
yeah.
talking to men behind my back, but she'd tell me to my face with such, I mean, look me directly in the eyes and say, there was never another guy. There's never another guy.
Oh yeah,
But
they
I'd pick up on these small little subtleties
yeah,
that were in
yeah,
the whole situation with, oh, you were just fishing on the things that you said you found. But meanwhile,
yeah,
what does it really matter? And don't look at my phone. That's my privacy. That's my privacy. You're breaking my privacy when
yeah, exactly.
and it was always let me know first. When come to find out, there's a second phone in the house. There was all these dirty little tactics, multiple Facebook accounts, a lot of
Yeah.
X's on them, X's from her past showing up. And she had me to the point where I actually allowed one of her exes the last time we got back together to come to our house and stay the night. And that's when I realized, that's when it hit me. And I was
Wow.
already spiraling out of control. I was already
Yeah.
so hurt and
Yeah.
destroyed
Yeah.
that I was not me at that point. And I decided
Right.
with everything I could to choose me. And she looked at me and said, I'm just not sure where I'm at. I don't want to be
Yeah.
with you no more. And I turned around and I says, I was in the nicest possible way while being hurt. I was like, I got to go, and I
Good for
packed
you.
my
Good
stuff
for
up,
you.
left, and it's
Yeah.
bad because a lot of guys can take and see this, and so can the ladies out there that are viewing this. And Terry Pickering, I'm not ignoring you. I see you on the messages, and thank you for all your comments. We're definitely going to get interactive with the comments, so don't be afraid anybody to comment in here. I will call it out, and we can I'll read it out to Maria, and we'll go from there. But when I took and left, it was still, you're right, Ken. I didn't fully choose you. No, cheating to me was just choosing to even so much as have a conversation about a relationship behind my back, not involving me, because so many toxic people in this world today give advice out of trauma, out of their life
Yeah.
experiences. But
Yeah.
what's the need to hide this? Why do we hide it? Well, that's the whole, the thing that brought that alarm. It wasn't that she was talking to somebody. It was that there was another guy there.
Yeah.
And I spiraled. I went bad, and I think a lot of us have this same story and the bad thing is especially in the female population, they can play the victim so well. And
Oh,
society
yeah.
is wired to go
Yeah.
embrace that female victim. And the guy's automatically like, oh, they look at the guy that's the victim actually, and they're like, oh, he's such a bad guy because they're spilling all of his wrongs, all of his traumas,
Yeah.
and they're taking broadcasting it across the world and they're
Yeah.
manipulating it, and stuff like that. They're taking the
Yeah.
closest things to you that you embraced with them. Like me, my ex had my passwords, my social security number, my driver's
Oh, yeah.
licenses.
Yeah.
She knew how to get into all my stuff. I had nothing to hide, but she grabbed a
But they
second
use
phone
it
and hid it.
against you, and then they go and accuse you of doing that. So it's one set of rules for them and a different set for you. So they can do what the heck they like,
Exactly.
but you can't do any of it. So to anyone who's watching, if you are still with a narcissist, then make sure you change all your passwords and don't let them have access to any of your stuff. I mean, this is common knowledge when you know, because it's unbelievable what they will do, and they will try and hack into your accounts. I mean, I had a message today from a woman who's I basically have advised her to go to the police because it isn't something I can help with, but her phone is being hacked. She said, I went and bought a new phone and it's now being hacked. On that note, I'll say we are talking about women narcissists and how men get abused, and that's the whole point of your your videos that you're doing, your podcasts and everything, Ken, because awareness needs to be spread. But when it comes to the actual behaviors, whether it's male or female, they're pretty much identical, except women have the upper hand because of what you've just said, Ken,
Yes.
because women are more likely to be believed, because women can't be the abusers, can they? Surely, if, oh yeah. And the other thing they do all the time is when they meet a new guy, they immediately start trash talking their ex, and they'll say he was abusive and he was this and he was
Yes.
that.
Yes.
And of course, that then makes the guy feel, oh, I want to be the one to protect her and I want to show her all men are not like that. So they suck you in right from the beginning.
Yes, and that's what happened with me. I even, when my ex and
I
I
know
were
it.
first got together, she actually went to go do a child drop off, and he got so mad and aggressive. And mind you, I'm naive to all this. He got so mad and aggressive that she came back to me and says he almost hit me. Well, I'm
Right.
6'1", 230-pound guy, and I will defend my wife. My
Yeah,
person.
absolutely. That's
So the
it.
first
That's
thing
it.
I'm like, okay, that's not going to go with me. And the bad thing is in the end, I was the guy that sat them down on my back porch saying, look, guys, look what you're doing to this kid.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie, there was a red flag that went off because my ex-wife, when I met her, she was an extremely angry person.
Yeah.
And it was, you could see her trying to hide it,
Yeah.
and something told me it was never really going away. It was just covered up.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to take too much of the spotlight. I do want to introduce Brian. Brian, would you take a minute to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi Ken. Hi everyone. First of all, a special thanks to Maria for joining
My
us tonight.
pleasure. My pleasure.
Such a pleasure to talk to her over the months and some excellent advice. Um, and just to recap on some of the things, some of the most relatable points have already been made. I can see Ken shaking his head at the same
Mhm.
time as I am when Maria's bringing up certain points. Um, for me, um, through therapy, I've been told not to call myself a victim, to 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 sort of classify myself as a survivor,
That's right.
and I have been through hell, and still continue to go through hell. And it's at this point that I will say, and this goes for anybody that's commenting or wishes to sort of join going forward, we have to be very careful online as to what's being said, um, namings, because myself, um, uh, 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 I'm the subject of an ongoing case with my ex-partner. So I personally have to be very careful. I'm sure Kenneth as well, and anyone else that joins us in the future or makes comments, we just need to sometimes stop and think exactly what we're saying. But if
Yes.
Yeah.
I just again could take a moment just to touch on some of the points. I met my ex-partner in June of 21, and we were just friends to start with. There was it didn't look like it was going anywhere. I'd made huge major life changes. Um, and she came into my life, and we kind of got close. And then one day she turned around and said, I just want to be part of your life going forward. You are everything I've ever wanted in a man. Um, and I was astonished. I
Hmm.
was absolutely astonished. I couldn't believe that this person had walked into my life. And from that point on, there was the typical, and Maria, I'm sure it's up there in the first chapter of your book, and it was a term I wasn't familiar with at the time, but I am now. Love bombing.
Love bombing. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Okay,
Number 3 in my
so
red flags book, actually.
number
Yeah.
three, I knew it would be up
Number 3.
there because
Yeah.
I felt like the luckiest guy. No one had ever said the
Yeah.
things that she was saying to me in
Yeah.
Yes.
the volume that she was saying. I was receiving cards, I was
Yeah.
receiving
Yeah.
text messages, gifts, pictures. I just felt just so elated, and it made me
Yeah.
feel so happy. But it wasn't long before the red flags really started to appear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
And we
she was
overlook those
actually,
red flags.
oh yes, so she was
You do,
already,
you do. Everybody does, and again, I talk about this in the book. Everybody overlooks them because the red flags are always there. My number one red flag is trust your gut, because deep down
yeah,
there are these little feelings, but because it's so good and there's that wonderful feeling of euphoria that you've just described, Brian, you want it to be real, so you brush them under the carpet. This is what
so
happens with everyone.
Yes.
Everyone who's been involved in a romantic relationship with a narcissist have all told me the same thing. So don't beat yourself up. You didn't know what you know
no, no.
then, what you know now. Anyway,
So this
carry on.
this
Yes.
this was the first kind of, and it was obviously at that stage it was positive. I was feeling wanted. I was feeling
Yeah.
loved for the
Yeah.
person that I
Yes.
was.
Yeah.
And with that came the reciprocation. I kind of bought into it. But it wasn't long before, I mean, I did find out early doors that she was actually seeing someone
Yeah.
at the point that she asked me to be in a relationship with him,
Yeah.
with her, sorry, with
Yeah.
her. Yeah, not
Yeah.
him. Um, and the biggest red flag was in the first week when she announced that she was going to his birthday party
Mm-hmm.
that weekend.
Yeah.
Now, it was at that point that the confusion set in because I'm a 44-year-old male. At the time, I was 42. I knew that gut feeling, Maria, that you speak about. I knew that gut feeling was that that decision was wrong.
It's wrong.
It was
Exactly.
it was wrong of her to partake in that situation and
Yeah.
not put me as a priority.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or take you
But
with her at least.
Yes,
what do you think I did? I allowed it to happen.
that's right. That's what most of
Let it
us do.
happen. Yeah,
We're
because
allowed
you're
to.
afraid to lose. Yeah, you're
Because
afraid
I
to
was
lose
afraid.
that
It was
fabulous. Yeah.
fresh.
We're
It was
afraid to
fresh. I was
lose.
afraid to lose.
We're
I was
made to
Exciting.
afraid.
feel. We're made to
I
feel that
was
we're
afraid.
actually insecure, and so we got to
Yeah.
work on that and not be insecure, and let them have their space that they call it.
Yeah.
All these things, and you read, and the
Yeah.
things that
I
you
was.
don't realize is you're not in a committed relationship. You're in
I was.
one where you're manipulated, but you don't
Yeah.
see that.
You don't. Yeah.
I was afraid to be perceived as some kind of control freak.
Yes.
Yep. There you go.
However, she dropped him like a hot stone and within 2 weeks asked me to move into her property. And I won't go into the financial side because that is part of an
Yeah.
ongoing
Okay.
case.
Mm.
But then we touched on it earlier about the berating of the exes.
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
Her ex, according to her, was Lucifer himself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
She'd got
Yeah.
children with him, and she couldn't do enough to make him sound like the devil to me. So I went away, and for months on end, I thought, this guy, well, how could he treat her so bad? You know, she's lovely, she's
Yeah.
caring, she's
Yeah.
beautiful. How could someone throw something like that away? And it was very, because I consider myself quite an intelligent person,
Uh-huh. You are.
albeit 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 a little bit silly in love. And it was around March of 22 she approached me and said, and I won't mention his name, but my ex is harassing me. She used those words. My
Mm-hmm.
ex is harassing me. Oh, what's he harassing you for? And bear in mind, I'd not been allowed to meet him, answer the door to him, answer the phone to him. And this was the same for his mother as well. Not being allowed, kept at bay. And I didn't realize this till later as to
Yeah.
why that would have been.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was all about finance. She owed money at the end of the day. She owed money to him, but she lied. She lied to me. She was lying to everyone around her about a financial situation. So I approached the ex. I with the intent, purely the intent initially to tell him to stop harassing her. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't harass my partner. And I met with the guy, and he was broken. He was a broken man.
Yeah.
And bear in mind this is only 6 or 7 months into my own relationship with said subject.
Yeah.
He was able, and he was with her for 12 years. And
Wow.
he said to me 8 of those years was suffering.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Now
Yeah.
he was close to tears. And what the interesting thing was, and the thing that I took away from that conversation, is that he was able to describe things to me that at that point in time I couldn't put into words.
Clicked.
And
Yeah.
because we were dealing with the same person, everything clicked into place.
Yeah.
Like
That's
I
it.
went away. I
Light bulb.
almost I
Yep.
almost went away from that meeting. I'd come from this guy's annoyed me. I'd come from that perspective to I feel sorry for that guy. And I was
Yeah.
so angry and felt so let down by my partner that we had several discussions after,
Yeah.
and and eventually she came round to the sort of way of admitting that yes, she did owe this money. So it was all one big lie to start
All
with.
a big lie. Yeah.
And
This is
those
it.
lies carried on through the relationship. If it wasn't that, it was that,
Yes.
until domestic
But
violence itself set in
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
each
But
year. Then
Maria, when you
it was followed
no,
by, shall we go
yeah,
to couples therapy, which I know that we've already spoken about. And so, yeah, that's kind of a snapshot of my position and my dealings with. And sometimes I
yeah.
question the word narcissist. I think, hang on, is it fair of me to label someone
Label.
that way? But
And
when
yeah, I hear this a
when
lot.
you yeah, when you see the memes, you read the books, you speak to people like yourself, Maria, in these positions where, you know, knowledgeable, you can't help but apply the term. You
Yeah,
can't help it because so many
yeah.
things fit the bill.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things there, and thank you so much for sharing all that. And I feel for every guy and every woman who goes through it, because I know, like when you said that meeting that man who you gone to just sort of tell him off a bit and tell him to, and then you see a man who's broken, and then it all, like you say, it all just fell into place. And then what you see, and you described it really well, the way you said that, is you actually see the spider's web of deceit that they've woven all around you, so that everything is a lie. And you're like, how can this be happening? And but still, they still have this power over you. They can still love bomb
Of
you.
course.
They can still, love bomb you with sex and with, oh, how fabulous you are, and yeah, but I was confused, or all kinds of BS they'll come out with. So I'm just really glad that you had the strength of mind to, as Ken says, find yourself and start loving yourself and start putting yourself first, because that's what it takes. But what I also want to talk about is, you said, labeling. And I get this a lot, and I quite often, I've seen it in the other groups. Oh, you're not a diagnostician, or you're not a clinical psychologist, blah blah blah. I'm not saying it to me personally, because I can throw that one out very very quickly. The fact is that the vast majority of people who have what I absolutely believe, from what I know and my experience and all the research that I've done over the past 6 years, people who have narcissistic personality disorder, the vast majority of them never get diagnosed.
Yes.
Mostly they get diagnosed because they've been court mandated to have a psych eval, or they go to their doctor because they're depressed or whatever, they've got some other issues, and they get referred to a psychiatrist, and then they do a psych eval there, and they see, oh wow, this person's got narcissistic personality disorder, which is a cluster B mental disorder, and there are 9 traits on the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of the American Psychiatric Association. That's the one we kind of all
Yes.
refer to, even though I'm British. But it's a mouthful to say it. DSM-5 is the short form. And they list 9 traits, which are very broad brushstrokes. So for anyone, do you want me to quickly, I jotted them down so I could
Yes,
very
please.
Yes.
quickly
Yes,
whip
please,
through them
please.
for you. Okay. So the 9 traits: grandiosity.
Where'd Brian take off
The
to?
second, so one is grandiosity. Second one is fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, or ideal love. Oh, I see we've just lost. Oh no, Brian's
There
back.
he is.
Okay.
He's back. He's back.
Number 3 is they believe they are special and unique, and they can only be understood by or associate with other people who are of, high status, people who are, and they'll often lie about this. They'll make stuff up,
Yes, very much.
They obviously, number 4, we know all this. We all know this. They require excessive admiration. Number 5 is
Lord.
a sense of entitlement. So they have unreasonable expectations of favorable treatment or automatic compliance with basically their expectations. So you're expected to, they say jump, and you are expected to say how high, regardless if it's the edge of a cliff and you're going to land on the rocks. Basically, that's my paraphrasing
Correct.
there.
Yes, I agree.
6 is interpersonally exploitative. We know that they use people and chew them up and spit them out, and they even, they will do this with their own children to get their own ends. Number 7, lacks empathy, unwilling to recognize or identify feelings or needs of others. I think lack is too weak a word, because in my experience of, I won't even go into it again, they have no empathy. They don't have it. They don't lack it. Lack means, well, you don't quite have enough. They have no empathy.
One thing I learned about empathy is a lot of them know how to portray empathy. They know how to act empathy.
That's called cognitive empathy, and I talk about that in my book as well. They do from observing people. They're great at mirroring and mimicking and buying into whatever they know you like. So they'll like what you like. They'll love the same music. They'll like the same food. And I've seen people switch from being vegetarian to being meat eaters as soon as they've left their vegetarian husband or partner.
Oh, yes. Music changes everything.
Met a new one, and suddenly overnight they are tucking in. One guy shared this with me from the group. He said, I couldn't believe it. She's posted on Facebook. She's been to this barbecue, and there she is with this big plate of steak. She's a vegetarian. Another one I always remember is, this is actually a woman I was, her husband had left her. He'd moved in with another woman, and her children obviously would go and visit him at the new place. And she said, my son came home to me and said, Mum, Dad's acting really strange now. She said, when we sat down to dinner, he started praying and saying grace. And she said, this is unbelievable. This man's a complete atheist. He's never been to church in his life. He doesn't believe God, religion, or anything.
Yep.
And now he's all pious and going to church and saying grace. So this is how, and they're doing it because the woman he was with was a Christian and these things were important to her.
Yes.
So straight away he'll start doing that. Oh yes, but it's all lies. But just quickly before I forget, the last 2 on the DSM-5 of the 9. So number 8 is, and it says often envious of others or believe others are envious of them.
Yes.
And number 10 is show arrogant, haughty behaviors. So those are very broad. I have a book that I'm going to be making free to everyone soon. It's called The No BS Guide to Healing from Narcissistic Abuse in Weeks, not years.
Amazing.
I might retitle it. But with that comes the worksheet, a spreadsheet to help people who don't know, am I the narcissist? Is person X a narcissist? So apart from these 9 basic ones, I've put questions from other very, very reliable places like the Institute of Relational Harm, that's done a massive body of research into relationship dynamics and abuse and all of that.
Yes.
And then I've added a whole bunch of my own that I've kind of picked up along the way with people. And I have there's over 100 things to check on this particular list. So 9 is just a start. And then very quickly, if you add into that, there are different types of narcissists.
Correct.
So you have your overt, grandiose.
Yes.
So there are some very typical people out there who we know straight away that person is a narcissist.
Very robot-like.
Sorry?
Very robot-like, I find, with those ones. Usually what I was able to see is when they go to work, they're like robots at work. It's weird. It's like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, they can be very focused, very high achievers. A lot of very high achieving, very successful people in the public domain are overt narcissists. Yes. So you've got overts and your covert malignant narcissists, which are really, really nasty people. Then you have your vulnerable victim. Oh, poor me, poor me. They're always the victim in every.
Just 1 second. We have a little bit of a technical difficulty. There we go. We got him back. Someone must have lost signal or so on. And KK, the pretending is insane. Yes, the pretending is very, very insane when it comes to these guys. It's all a cover-up. And let's see, do I still have audio with you, Maria? Can we hear you? Oh, actually, I cannot. Oh, let's see what happened. Hmm. Let's go this way.
Dealing with
Uh-huh.
these issues.
Yeah.
Um, and I will bring this question to Ken actually. Ken, when you with your ex-partner, when you introduced her for the first or second time, or the initial period that you introduced her to your friends and family, the question is, did anyone spot what you couldn't see
Oh yes.
instantly?
There was a lot of people that did, and my family all knew, especially my family. And they say it takes one to know one. That's the scary part. And that, but I can tell you, I had some family members that were absolutely do not, you don't want this, but I'm going to support you in whatever you choose. I understand you're going to go learn your own lesson, and that's what I did. I went and learned my own lesson.
Yeah.
Because what I experienced was two family members, my brother and my, at the time, 96-year-old nan, okay, 96 years old, spotted something I couldn't see,
Yes.
and
Mm.
that was
Yeah.
her over the top um,
Yeah.
uh, presence of herself. It was
Yes.
Yeah.
almost like an act, and I
Yeah.
could see this.
I couldn't
I could
either.
see an act. Inside of the four walls, it was just almost like a normal person.
Hmm.
Outside, with if she was with friends or family, or more so my friends, it was a little bit uncomfortable to watch. Even on
Yeah.
the phone, it was
Yeah.
uncomfortable to listen to because it was clearly kind of fake.
See, I had the same
Yeah.
thing
Sorry,
go
Maria,
on. It
I
was,
No,
interject
no,
again.
that's
I
okay.
know
And
I
it's
know we were running through the points.
no, it's okay. It's an important one because that what you're seeing is them putting on different masks for how they think people want them to behave.
Yeah.
And then if they're being flamboyant and whatever, when they're, with your friends or family or their friends, it's just all a show.
they're
So you see
chameleons.
it. But just very quickly, so we talked about the 9 traits, and I said that they're very, very, there's so much underneath all of those umbrellas. But because there are different types of narcissists, like the overt, the covert, the vulnerable victim, the cerebral, the brainy person, the somatic, who are all about sexual seduction and what have you. The reason it's important to know this is because I've had many people say to me, oh, but I've looked it up, and arrogance and haughtiness, grandiosity, that's not what my person is like. Well, but let's dig a little bit deeper. And then when we start digging deeper, then I'll figure out very quickly that actually you're with a vulnerable victim narcissist. They are still massively abusive, manipulative, all of that, but they just show up differently because they have a different personality type. But
Yes.
they're still narcissists. So that's why I'm saying it's also important to realize there's those 9 traits, there's a ton underneath them all, and then there's all these different types.
And see, that's what
But
made it so hard for me trying to find out all this stuff, is because, you get into this world, and one of the things I did, because I was so spiritually, mentally, and emotionally wrecked, that, you'd get people reach on out and they're like, she's a dark empath. And I turned around and I found out what a dark empath is. They are literally
Yeah.
like an evil narcissist. It's
Yeah, because they
crazy
can,
how that
yeah,
works.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
none of us are perfect. And, like me, I had a real rough childhood. I kind of learned to lie. So my life became kind of a lie a little bit here and there. But I was also at that point of growth where it's like, you know what? I'm leaving that behind. I'm
Right.
super hard on myself. I'm going to push myself through all this stuff. And then my I guess I call it next now,
Right.
turned
The next,
around
yeah.
and looked at everything. They were taking everything and putting it up on the shelf to later be revisited, to use it against me later. And that's exactly what happened. The second she left, boom, the whole world knew everything that I had confided in her. And here I
Oh God,
am
yeah.
Wow.
holding all the
Ken, that is
secrets.
an amazing point. Yeah, amazing
That's
point.
what they do. You can. I've shared a meme. I think it was yesterday. I've shared it many times. But your secrets are not safe with a narcissist. Basically, anything you share with them, and I think that it's in the book as well, they will then go out and share it completely inappropriately
Yes.
with people who have no business knowing, and they will share like really personal, intimate stuff that you don't want that kind of stuff being shared, because you've shared that with them in an intimate setting and because you trusted them.
Yeah.
And it can be about, maybe you had awful sexual abuse in your childhood and you've told them that in common. They'll think nothing of, putting it on Facebook
See
or
what
talking to anyone who listen.
see one of the
Just
things I
awful.
found out is I've got what they call a guilt trauma.
Right,
I've had, I'm just always guilty about things, or I feel guilty about things. So
right,
all the things that I was working on in our relationship, the breaking of these, these toxic cycles that were within myself, that were
yeah.
self-harming to myself, she was taking these things that were true, but mixed with a little bit of whatever she wanted to mix them with,
Yeah.
and took them to some of the closest people, the people that I looked up to, and just absolutely wrecked me across the board. And the bad thing was, the thing that really got me, and it took me a while to figure it out, was she had her friends and her family involved in it. And
Yeah.
that's when it really it's like, and then at the same point, my own family is looking at me, and they're like, why is he acting so crazy? And are pushing me away. So I'm literally by myself.
Yeah.
Anxiety is so
isolation,
high that it's ridiculous. I mean, and I just, through all that stuff, I learned that in males, anxiety can mimic uncontrollable arousal, which that really surprised me when I learned this. So a damaged empath, or the victim, can turn around and go portray all these things looking for some sort of relief. And meanwhile, then the next is sitting there going, you see, look at him. He's
Look
doing
at
it
him.
now.
He's crazy. He's unhinged. Yeah, exactly. This is what they do. And this is all part of the manipulation. And they are so bloody cunning and so clever at what they do. But you have to remember, they do not think, act, or function the way normal people do.
No.
And it's been shown on research, the brain scans, that their brains look different. Because they
Yes.
developed a different way of living and being and existing in the world from an early childhood, because it does come from arrested development, basically. And they can't see beyond that. They don't know how to be any other way. So I'm not saying we should feel sorry for them. They cannot be helped. They don't want to be helped.
Yep.
So they are deadly. They are so in how they psychologically and in other ways destroy people.
Well, I
And
call
through-
it
through- through
again, I call it the atomic bomb of any abuse. I've seen people get physically abused. I grew up where I watched my mother physically abused, literally tossed across a room. And I know it hurt her, but in this type of, and I'm not saying that my type of abuse is more grand or anything than her, but the way it felt, I mean, I was in a fog. I couldn't see nothing. And I was reaching for anybody, anything, any type of good feeling, but people would come up to me and I still couldn't feel relaxed, happy. And the only person I could feel that way with was my next. And that was the crazy, insane part about the whole thing. So I'm reaching on out, and that's the thing that people don't understand. It's something I want to really touch base with you, Maria, on today's episode, and I'd like to revisit some other stuff. And again, everybody, before I ask this question, if you're viewing this, please help us get on out there. This is going to be broadcasted Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, and help us raise awareness. Hit the share button, send it on out through your social medias.
Yeah,
and if you're a survivor, or even you're still considered a victim, please go seek help. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. And I don't care if you're male or female, you are worth it. So my biggest one is a lot of these toxic cycles that the survivor in the end takes on. Through doing all this stuff, I did a lot of studies, and I found out that the victims are capable of cheating, stalking, all these things. They're absolutely trauma bonded, and society looks at narcissism as that's what the narcissist does. So now that makes it real hard on the victim, because they're like, oh my God, I did this, while their brain's in this nasty fog. In the courtrooms, they turn around, get filled up, and it looks bad. That's the problem, is the dividing line. Nobody understands what it really is. It's so covert.
Yeah, very relatable, Ken. Very good point there.
Absolutely. And it's a problem globally, because, I also have a mixed group for co-parenting and parental alienation. And there you see so much of it, because the courts just are clueless. The whole legal system, I'm always saying to people, try and get a lawyer who has at least some knowledge of covert abuse, coercive control, which is recognized legally in the UK now, but it's not across the world. And the parenting, the damage they're doing to their children. It's just
Yes.
horrendous because they use, and because you're a father and you've been through it, Ken. You
Yes.
have to fight tooth and nail, but you have to really, really know what you're doing, and you need people who know what they're doing and what they're dealing with. Because if you go to, your average Joe or Jane lawyer who thinks, oh, this is just a bog standard custody case, you are going to be, they'll wipe the floor with you, and the judges will believe them. And, it's just awful. But this is something that's going to take a long time to change because
Yes.
the system just doesn't know. And I was talking to somebody recently about this, and we were talking about how there is a massive need for education at a much earlier stage. I personally think children, well, kids, young adults, I'm talking about, 14, 15, 16, while they're still in this school system, should be taught about these abusive relationships
Yes,
and
I
what to
agree.
look for. And they're not.
No, and that's the bad
So
thing
it's
is,
kind of the same.
like for me, I was
Yeah,
trying to educate my son because I never knew. And it's funny
yeah,
that you mentioned
exactly.
that because as I'm educating my son through these habits, my next was actually looking at me telling me I was a bad dad because I was talking bad about her. And I'm sitting here
Yeah.
going,
You see
no.
how they
Now my
see how they twist
15-year-old,
it?
he's got his own eyes. And he's a very intelligent, kid, very, very intelligent. And the whole time she's like, you're, mentally abusing him. You're making him believe something about me that he
Yeah.
doesn't need to believe. And I'm sitting here going, wait a minute. So when it finally clicked, because she's trying to use some of my stuff, some of my parts that I've healed from in the past against me now to take in, basically bring it in the spotlight, get me in jail, whatever it might be. So we stepped into a courtroom and she literally looked over at the judge, a child that she has no biological bonding to whatsoever, and says, I'd like to get custody of him. And I remember the look on that judge's face when he looked at her and was like, what are you thinking? And that's when it clicked with me just as well. There's something wrong here. This person literally thinks that they have no boundaries. They can do whatever they please.
Exactly. Exactly.
That there's
That's
no
it.
limits in life to them. They're just the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's it. I'm smashing through boundaries because I had just quickly jotted down in case you wanted to. I mean, we are talking through it and it's working brilliantly, but I had written down just a quick list so I can, and smashing through your boundaries is one of them.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and they will bring false charges against you. I have loads of times heard from people who, in the parenting battles, they have accused the husband, the father, of sexually abusing the children, which
Oh,
is
yes.
always lies. And it's just, oh God, it's so deplorable. The only good thing I can say, because people often message me about this, and they're in completely distraught. And the one thing I always say to them is, look, these cases cannot be proven because the police will investigate, and they do. And I know lots of cases where they will investigate. And if you haven't done it and it didn't happen, it's impossible for the police to prove it. So you won't be found guilty and whatever. But the problem is, of course, is that the damage it does to that father. Now people
Yeah.
will think that I've abused my kids.
Exactly. And
And it's
yes,
a
KK, that
lie.
is absolutely awful. One of our
And
commenters.
yeah, this is how they do it. And and they don't care that. And it's a lie because it's one of the most reprehensible things anyone can do is, that kind of abuse to a child.
Yes.
And to be accused when you didn't do it.
Yeah.
Funny enough,
And those
I
lies
watched,
can stretch across the board. Sorry to interrupt there, Maria, but
no, it's
those
just,
lies
yeah,
don't just have to
yes,
be
I
that
can.
extreme.
Yeah,
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 they can
yeah.
be anywhere in that spectrum. I myself, and it's nowhere near as bad as the example
Yeah.
you've just given. I was
Yes.
accused of waiting for my next on the school car park at school kicking out time. Now,
Yeah.
to the next person, that might not be the biggest deal in the world, but for me, knowing that it was a complete fabrication and her using the school premises as
Yeah.
almost like an impact statement to the police,
Yeah.
it's different to saying I bumped into, or I was waiting for outside a butcher's shop or a
Yes.
news agent. she had to use the school as the weapon. Yeah. So
Yes.
obviously, when that's presented to a police officer, it looks, oh wow, this guy's unhinged, And I've gone all out to prove these allegations. Do you think the police want to know?
No, they don't, because a
No,
lot of times they've already took an approach
no.
to the police. They've already said, "Look at this guy, he's crazy. Look at this girl, she's crazy." All
Yeah,
But
those
yeah,
it's
things.
But I think
It's
Maria
like
was right on the
mine.
comments earlier. I think Maria was right earlier when she talks about the police,
Yes.
and their involvement, and it's the lack of understanding more than anything
Well, a
about
lot of police don't
what an
believe in
abuse.
narcissism. I
Well,
found this out just
it's
recently.
not like, it's almost like a not recognized term. We've mentioned
Yes.
coercive control, which now in the UK is. I've done a lot of reading about coercive
yeah,
control,
mhm,
and one of the uh, sort of prerequisites that you need to have gone through is almost ending up in a psychiatric ward,
Oh,
which is
yes.
yeah,
something that happened to me, and I
yeah.
don't mind sharing that with you. It
Wow.
was, and we're only talking a number of months back, the single most traumatic thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yes,
like, what position do you need to have been put in to end up somewhere like that?
exactly. And
Yes.
that's
Meanwhile, the narcissist is sitting watching their
yeah,
TV, cup of
they don't
tea,
give a they
not a
don't give a
care in the
damn.
world.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
And
why
that's
I
a
have no yeah, so I have no sympathy for them or you know, as a therapist, I always try to see, people have these issues, they need help, but they don't want or need help and they don't care. They don't
No.
care a single jot for other people, including their own kids. And that, to me, they're just reprehensible. So my advice is always to people, get away from them if you possibly can.
Yeah,
If you can't, and I know there are people who are in situations where they simply cannot get out for any number of reasons. It could be financial, it could be lots of, businesses
Yes.
together. There are reasons. But what I say to those people is, okay, right now you cannot get out. But I want you to make a promise to yourself that one day you will. One day you will get out of this relationship, even if it's 10 years down the line when your kids are old enough to make their own decisions. Make that decision for yourself now, because psychologically, it
yeah,
gives you that hope that, okay, I'm not doomed for the rest of my life for this. And it kind of lights a little
Yes.
spark inside of you that one day I'm going to leave you. And when you shift your perspective out of that victim mode, which I also don't like the word, but it's, we're trying to find a better one, that you're going to survive this, you're going to get beyond it. I know of one woman, I didn't work with her, but she was in a group I was in at one point. She spent 14 years, literally 14 years planning, because he had the control of everything, but she managed to get a little part-time job and she frittered away this cash over the period
Yes.
of 14 years and created a complete new identity for herself. She literally had set up a secret bank account in a different state. She was in America, and she escaped in the middle of the night. She had set up her escape route, her new life in a different state, and she did it. And she said, "Now I'm happy, and I've been narc free for, I think it was 3 or 4 years at that point." I know another woman who was in Australia, and her husband was also very physically abusive to her and the children. And she tried to get help locally and she just wasn't getting anywhere. And she literally loaded herself and her kids up into they had like a little camper van thing.
Yeah.
One night when I think he was asleep, he was passed out drunk. She loaded them in. She said, "I loaded them in. I learned how to reverse the damn thing out of my driveway," because she wasn't very good at that apparently. And she drove across Australia to a
Well,
different part altogether, hundreds of miles away. And she said, and I never looked back. And
see
she had
that.
a friend or maybe a family member in another. These are the kind of things
yeah.
people may have to do in some cases.
I
Yes.
think as well, Marie, you mentioned that there were different modes. We talk about, you might have a business, or you might have children, or it might
Yeah,
be the next thing. But
yeah,
sometimes, and I think this was the problem with me, where I wasn't attached, even financially, I wasn't allowed to be attached. Okay. But I was living with her. The thing for me, and after looking at this extensively, I now know that I was, and to a point still am, trauma bonded.
Yes.
Right.
Trauma
Yeah.
bond, I found out,
That's
is
that
extremely
is
difficult to get away from.
that is just something that's and it's and it's a situation where the love bombing is a part. So
Yes.
you pulled in, and you remember all these good times,
Yeah,
and you
exactly.
try to forget the bad. You try to think we can work through the negative.
Yes.
We'll get over
Yes.
that hurdle. And in any normal relationship, and let's face it, no relationship is perfect. There'll be fights, there'll be disagreements, there'll be,
The problem
um,
is they don't care about none of that stuff when you're
no, of
begging and
course,
pleading that to them.
yeah, of course not. So that's in a normal relationship, but in these narcissistic relationships or toxic relationships, it's there's sort of the one person that's trying to give their all, male or female,
Yeah.
give their all. They're doing everything to try and please, and you are hanging on that next comment, that next "I love you," "I
Yes.
want
Yeah,
to be with you,"
exactly.
you
Because
are my
you want that.
future. Of
You want the fix. You had such a
course,
dopamine rush when
of
that
course.
love bombing was going on, and you were feeling so great and so euphoric, and you want that fix again,
And you
and you
get that
remember
fix.
it.
You get
Yes.
the fix, and all of a sudden you're back up there. You're
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
elation for a day or two or a week, and
Mhm.
then you're hit with another. Hang on, that's boundary crossing stuff. That is
Right.
Yes.
Yeah,
unacceptable. But by this time, you're even afraid to bring it up because you
yeah.
know the consequences. And in my situation, I'm going to give you, I think, my top three
Mm.
traits that I had to deal with, and it was the lying.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
the
Yeah, they're
contin
pathological liars. Yeah, that's right.
oh
Pathological liars.
the continual lies, the silent treatments
Yep.
Yes.
when it had all gone wrong.
On
Yeah,
my
so
list.
there'd been a
Yeah,
disagreement. Yeah, the silent treatments were horrendous. They would go on for days, if not weeks. And
yeah.
I think the third one was definitely that lack of empathy, that complete no show of empathy.
Th-
Sometimes, as I think Ken mentioned earlier, there were moments where there was a fake showing, or
Yes.
if she was out in public, and saw,
Yeah.
I don't know, somebody collecting for charity, it would be, oh, isn't that so sad that that happens? Or it might be something on the TV, so sad. And I knew that it was fake because there would be far, far more serious events that had happened in the
Exactly.
course of the relationship that warranted a tear, or, me to give her a hug because she was genuinely upset. And
Mm.
yet, and it was more so when it was in company. So for me, complete zero empathy, which was brought up a number of times in the relationship. I
Mm.
called it, because I wasn't really that familiar with the terms narcissistic or
Yes.
empathy. I called it emotional detachment. That's what I called it. I
Right.
called her out on it, and I said, it's like you're emotionally detached from me sometimes. You can you can send me these text messages that mean the world. You want to
Uh-huh.
marry me. I am your soulmate. You are the person that I've been waiting for all these years. The list goes on. The list is actually compiled for this sort of, um, judicial thing that's going on in the background. So I've extracted, I mean, I've worked on this for
Yes.
months and months. I've
Yeah.
gone to the ends of the earth to prove to any law enforcement or courts that ask the question, look at the pattern, look at what has happened here. I've
Yeah.
extracted text messages from phones, I've extracted emails, WhatsApps, messengers, I've put them in tables. I've re- I was forced to record conversations in the end because I sent myself to therapy in September of 22 because I was told that I was the problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now
Yeah.
I don't
I
want to take it
was
into
the problem. I had already almost conceded that I was the problem because I couldn't figure it out. It was
No,
so
exactly. Yeah.
confusing.
Yeah.
I was listening to what she was saying, and I thought, well, I don't actually buy into that, but I'm going to agree with you. I'm
yes.
going
Just
to agree
and
with
that's
you
what happens
to
because
appease.
That's the
yeah, just
accountability
repeat.
difference.
Exactly. Exactly. This is
And
what
my
you do, and you do it like,
and
I just want a bit of peace and quiet
yeah,
for 5 minutes.
and
Yes.
my
I agree with
therapist. So
you.
I went to my therapist in September of 22, just a private therapist that I paid for, And I really wanted to buy into this. And I went in to this therapist, sat down, how can I help? You know? And I was open and honest. And I said, there are times when I talk to my partner that I don't feel like it's what she deserves. I raise my voice, or I
Hmm.
will shout her, I will pull her up. And the conversation started with that as the reference point. Okay.
Right. So you're
So
blaming
each
yourself. Yeah.
each week we went on, and I was open and honest about the relationship. I told her the highs, the lows, the good, the bad. And we went from week to week to week. And it must have been probably week 8, week 10. She sat me down and informed me that she didn't believe that the problem lay with me.
And it took
Yes.
She
8 or 10 weeks for her to figure that
she
out for you.
she told me, well, yeah, because one reason or another, I was going in there telling her of the situations that had occurred. Yeah, okay, she's listening, she's listening. I'm trying to make the relationship work, so I don't think she wants to be too hard on me. But in the end, ultimately, she had to be honest with me and say, this is an abusive relationship.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I'm
Now,
glad she
And
finally got
I,
that for you. Yeah.
I don't want to
and
interrupt too
that,
much. Hold on, real quick. We got a
yeah,
commenter. Someone in here has actually stated the zero emotion and the trauma bond has you hugging their legs, not wanting them to go. And it's funny, I can relate to this on 2 different levels. In the beginning, when my ex was toxic, I was trying to get her out of my life with the screaming, the yelling, the angry, all these things. But now the tables have turned. I was that person that was screaming, begging, I'll do anything, all that stuff. It's funny. And this is what creates the chameleon effect for the victim versus the narcissist, is because you reflect so much. And it's, a victim, the narcissist itself, they don't want to lose that supply. So
Exactly.
they will beg, they will get down on their knees, they will cry, they will put whatever they need to. If there's no place to go, if there's all those things, they will put it out there. And see, in my case, I was uh, a new business owner, and I was struggling. I had just left another relationship where my ex as well was a different type of narcissist, lost my
Wow.
son to the state, had to go fight for him. So I was fighting through that trauma. Imagine the devastation of your child just one day being gone, you
Oh, yeah.
know?
Horrendous.
And I was
Horrendous.
fighting through that when I met my next, my ex-wife, and
Mhm.
I was in that spiraling mode. So I looked like I was just garbage. I wasn't healed. I didn't know what healing was. And that's something I want to continue on. Maria keeps trying to take and go through our boundaries. And then there's another point afterwards that I want to take and bring into awareness, because I think a lot of people, the biggest thing is teaching how to identify. That's the big thing. When it comes to narcissist versus victim, and like Maria, I hate the word victim.
Yes.
Because that's one of the biggest things of a narcissist. They run around calling themselves a victim, all the time.
Yeah.
So it shades the whole
Yeah.
thing. But I want you to go back through those boundaries, because one of the things I realized when you're talking about those boundaries and when you're done, I'd like you to possibly touch base about what creates those movable boundaries, that stem all the way back to our childhood, if you get where I'm directing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Just quickly before that, we've talked about trauma bonding because obviously, Brian, you just brought that up, and you both understand it because it's very, very common to get trauma bonded, and it's one of the biggest things most people struggle with. And I did some training in the group a while back in the guys group, and I showed you how I can help you to break the trauma bond in literally one session. And it's
Yes.
shocking. People are like, I can't believe it. You can't do that. Well, I can. So if anyone's trauma bonded and they need help, then they definitely should contact me.
Yes,
So
please do.
boundaries is a big issue as well. And boundaries is often connected with codependency, which is another big, big subject. And I
Yes.
actually have a 12-week program that I created that is all about breaking codependency. And boundaries is one of the modules in that. So it's a big, chunky subject. But the thing with boundaries, that just to kind of chunk it down to, because we haven't got all night and it's a huge subject.
Yes.
Usually you learn to let your boundaries be pushed in childhood because you are trying to do things to keep yourself safe. So most of the people, probably 80% of the people I've worked with anyway, and obviously you've talked about it, Ken, yourself, you had an abusive childhood. Most of the people that I did had in some form of or other. So when you have an abusive childhood, you are not allowed to be seen and be heard and be validated and be loved and be, a safe person. You're not in a safe world. So you're constantly on the lookout for what's that person going to do? What's daddy going to do? What's mommy going to do? How can I modify my behavior to keep them happy? So
Exactly.
you're constantly, you're not really allowed to have boundaries. And people pleasing grows out of these relationships, these dysfunctional family dynamics massively, because you're always trying to do something to keep that person happy. That way you can keep yourself safe.
Yes, and it can even
When
stem all the
you,
way back to the school. Maybe you can't make
oh,
friends in school.
absolutely.
All these things can stem in. Go ahead, Maria. I just want to put
Yeah,
that
they
part
can.
in.
From the home, from school, because you're trying to keep yourself safe essentially. So you're going to bend in the breeze as much as possible, just to try and keep safe. Well, if I
Yes.
don't say this, then they can't tell me off, or they can't hit me. Or if I don't do that, well then, or if I do that, if I tidy up and I make everything, if I you're constantly modifying your behavior always to keep the abuser happy. And this then translates as you get older, you don't really quite know how to speak up for yourself, or you will agree with people because you don't want to create a fuss, and you become a people pleaser. Pleasing is huge. Or you can
Yes.
go the complete other way and be a complete bloody rebel, and be reckless and don't care about, it's kind of, you go the complete opposite direction. And again, we're getting into family dynamics, and
Yes.
it gets very complicated. But boundaries, how you figure out, to know what your boundaries are is where you need to start. Well, what are my boundaries? And I think I talk about this in the book as well. So you have to decide, especially if you've been in a toxic relationship like you guys have, and probably everyone watching has. You have to start with yourself. And you start with your core values. Well, what are my core values for me in a relationship? And this
Yes.
can be obviously a romantic relationship, friendships, whatever, family. What is important to me? And you get your piece of paper. Absolutely, these are important to me. Loyalty, honesty, trust. Those are things that are important to you. And you write down, you brainstorm until you get, your list could be 10 things long, it could be 20 or 30. It depends on what's important to you. So then you think, okay, so when I'm in a relationship, how would it feel if any of those boundaries were broken? I find out she's lied to me, or I found out she's cheating. Absolute deal breakers. So you
Yes.
work out, what are your deal breakers? Because, and you say, right, in a new relationship, I want someone who has these type of core values: honesty, integrity, warmth, generosity, blah blah blah. And you're going to have a list. You're not going to find someone who's perfect and has all of them, but this is where your deal breaker strategy comes in. Well, what for me is an absolute deal breaker, if I see that in this person, relationship over,
Yes.
and so then this is how you start to determine your boundaries. Well, okay, you know, let's say it's early on in the relationship, you should know all the red flags by now, because this is really important.
Yes.
And having been through what you've been through, your intuition would kick in much, much quicker, and you'd see the red flags. But then as you get into a relationship, you're looking at, well, all these core values that I have in me and that I want in that person. Then you're looking at your deal breakers. So it's when you get to the deal breakers and you see that person isn't respecting those points of integrity that you have, those core values. So that's been broken. And of
Yes.
course, nobody's perfect, and relationships in the beginning, yeah, it's great and fun and it's sexy and hot and all of that. And then you start to really get to know each other, and that determines whether you want to stay together, you want to grow the relationship long term, and you talk about these things. And that, you can bring these things up, not if you suspect the person's a narcissist, obviously. And you say, well, what are your deal breakers? If I find out that you've cheated on me, that's it. There's no going back from that.
Mm-hmm.
That said, some people have been in relationships where their partner cheated and they've managed to patch things up and things worked out. So it
Yes.
isn't always going to murder every single relationship. It just, you've got to take all these different variables into account. And, why did it happen? Were there issues that you guys could have worked out and should have talked about and blah, blah, blah. But it's always about being true to yourself. And I always come back to you, Ken, because you so got that value of putting Ken first, self-love, unconditional self-love,
Yes.
not the vain sort of thing. So you've also, you've got to think, what do I need to feel safe? What do I need to feel valued? What do I need to feel seen and heard and respected?
Yes.
And these are things that everybody should have. Everyone has a God-given right to these things in their lives.
See, so
It's really
people don't
interesting.
understand.
It's really interesting that is, Maria, because I entered my last relationship with those boundaries already in place. They were set.
Yeah,
I knew
yeah,
what my deal breakers were.
right.
One of the things we have
Okay.
already mentioned. I told the person what those deal breakers were.
And they use
I'd
them
Yeah,
sit
against
down and
you.
say, yeah, I'd say, look,
Ooh,
trust is a massive thing with me. The loyalty, the honesty,
I think we
and you know
lost.
what? Over the course, she'll rejoin. Yeah,
There
we've
she
got her back. We've got her
is.
back. Over the course of the relationship, hmm, over the course of the relationship, each one of those
got broken.
boundaries were
Right.
broken, but
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
already too late for me. I was
Right.
in that
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
in that web. I'd already
yeah,
had the spider wrap that cotton
yeah,
around me.
exactly.
But
I
that's the
So
could
key right
not
now.
escape.
One thing
yeah, the
I've
important,
learned. I'm
yeah,
sorry. Would you like to go first?
that's okay. I was just going to quickly say the key differential there is you didn't know then what you know now, which is why I said
Yeah.
that it's so bloody important to know the red flags to look for. Because if you know them, then okay, I'm going to be careful here. Then the other thing about boundaries is that you set them, your deal breakers, and you stick to them. You stick to them, and there has to be consequences if that person breaks them. But of course, as you've rightly said, Brian, from your experience, it was too late. You didn't know then, and you know what you know now, and it's been
Exactly.
smashed.
A-
And she's been
And just
doing a
to,
number on you
yeah,
psychologically all the way through,
yeah.
you see.
And just
And
to add as well, the actress was that good. The actress
Yeah,
was that convincing
they
that
are.
even when those boundaries were crossed, they had been crossed, there was always a reason or an excuse or a lie or never an I'm sorry. There was never I'm sorry. It was
or
she
if there
managed
is,
to
it's
get
a brief
around.
one.
Yeah, she managed to get around the sort of apologetic side of things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes it would turn around. So the end of the conversation, I walk away thinking, hang on a minute, this was somehow my fault. I don't understand
Yeah,
that.
and
And
that's
it's all
it.
to do with that state of confusion.
Yeah, exactly. And you explain it so well because everything you've explained is exactly what they do. Exactly what they do.
One, I
Anyway,
know.
Ken, you were gonna your turn now.
One of the things I noticed is I had boundaries, but through my own guilt, because I've been through a lot in life. I've made mistakes. I've done all these things, which kind of transforms who we are. So we walk into this relationship and we find somebody who they're going to make mistakes. We know nobody's perfect. We understand. And so therefore we have that overabundance of understanding. The biggest, boundary that I never paid attention to that I really wished I would have is the ability to maintain. When you walk into a relationship, so many people today just dive in, and I did everything to fight against that. I even looked at my next in the beginning and says, I'm tired of being, a woman Superman. I'm tired of being that knight in shining armor. And all that stuff. But it's funny because they maintained just long enough to trauma bond me using sex, money,
Yeah.
making me feel like I was this grand
Yeah,
person,
yeah.
and then the second I was no longer perfect and I didn't view them as perfect, it was another story. And then mine, what she did is
Absolutely.
she started making it look like she was working on herself. And this would always last a week, 2 weeks, and
Yeah.
maybe a month at tops, and then we're back into this toxic cycle again.
Back in the cycle. Yeah, yeah. That's exactly how it goes. And you've got that love bombing, devaluing, discarding in some cases, and then hoovering. But it's love bombing, devaluing in within that relationship before one or other of you, discards. It's
Yes.
awful. It's so toxic. It really is so toxic.
It taught me that
And
in the line of boundaries, that if someone can't respect me,
So
if they
important.
can't
So
maintain,
important.
if they can't
Yeah.
reciprocate what I'm giving,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
absolutely perfect, but I'll tell you by
And
majority,
it's got to be give and take. Yeah.
yeah, but
Absolutely.
by majority, and this is because I learned through all these things, not having these boundaries, that's not loving yourself. Loving
No,
yourself isn't
exactly.
always going to the store, buying yourself pants, making yourself look good, buying some amazing cologne. It is
Yeah.
about digging into yourself. And I'll tell you, one of the
Absolutely.
greatest things about me, and it's one of the things I'm so thankful for my mother for, is that I'm a fighter. I
You
learned
are.
to take
Yeah.
my pain and turn it into
Yeah.
power.
Yeah, and you've
And
really done that. You've really done that, Ken. And I'm so proud of you. Like I said when we had the chat before we started here, I'm so proud of you for the work you're doing. And I know you're really going to grow this and spread this awareness. And I really, really take my hat off to you and you too, Brian. And it's like I said, it's not everyone that will do this, but a certain number of guys who've been through this just have this absolute calling to fight
yes,
back and spread awareness and help other people. So
that's
that's why I
always
was
been
so
who I
happy to
am as
be.
Ken. I've
Yeah.
always
yeah,
been that
And
and
guy to go
it's
help.
yeah.
for those that are out there and they're not understanding or recognizing why they feel the way that they feel. And we've all been at that stage at some point where you don't understand why this person's actions are not matching the words. They're telling you that I love you so much, I want you forever, but then their actions are almost the complete opposite. um
Yes,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
there is that help out there for them, but it's just trying to find that correct pathway. And for me, it was pretty much logging on and doing what we said at the beginning, typing that
Yeah.
into Google. Why is this happening? I don't understand this. And I
yes,
almost see it as like it can be thought of as maybe like a disease that initially you get symptoms. It might be a rash on your skin, or you've
Oh
yes,
got
yeah.
some aches and pains, and you know that it's
Yeah.
not normal, but you haven't got enough information to make any kind of diagnosis. So
exactly,
you
Yeah.
go to the doctors, and they
Yeah.
too don't exactly know. So you go for sort of tests, and it's a long process before you start to
Yeah.
find channels that are answering the questions. And for
Yeah.
me, it was sitting back and reading almost like a bullet points, several
Yeah.
bullet points of what narcissistic behavior is. Some of those bullet points, I have to say, they weren't relevant, but the majority
Yeah.
were. And
Yeah.
it was the ones that I knew that I don't display: the silent
Yeah.
treatments, the lack of
Yeah.
empathy.
yes,
For me,
And these are the
empathy is
things yeah, just to quickly interject there, because remember I said that there's the 9 traits, but they kind of
yeah,
fall short. Silent
yeah,
treatment is huge, and you won't often see that. So
oh
yeah,
yes.
you've got to be looking for the bigger picture.
And when you're
And
trauma
like
bonded,
you
and
might say
in
that
sorry,
sorry.
yeah, I was trying to add into that because that silent treatment, when you're trauma bonded, a lot of
Awful.
times, and in trauma, mind you, a lot of those times they're giving you that silent treatment, and you can't leave them alone. You're begging them, talk to me,
Yeah,
please. Let's
absolutely. Yeah,
fix
it's
this,
terrible.
please. And you're just
Yeah,
absolute in
yeah,
desperation. I know that happened to me so many times,
yeah. It's
and
horrible.
they'd
Absolutely
look at you
horrible.
and just they didn't care about your feelings. It was,
Yeah,
I just want my peace, or whatever they want to
yeah,
label it.
yeah.
They just did not have. And that's the thing that people don't understand. That is a sign of lack of empathy. If you can't set
It's
yourself off to
emotional.
the side and
Yeah.
take care of somebody's emotional need when they're hurting, you don't feel empathy.
Yeah, exactly. What they're doing to you is emotional torture.
Yes,
It
yeah.
absolutely is. And I know exactly what you're talking about there, Ken. And it's just soul destroying.
it
And they
is.
just don't care. Oh, I need my peace. Oh, you're too needy. Oh, just they're just
I had the
so
I had
selfish.
the when we sort of we'd had some kind of disagreement about something, and she would go silent, and it was a complete silence. It would be
Yeah.
Oh, I was blocked on all social media. That was one of the things. She wouldn't answer the
Yeah.
calls or the texts. I was
Yeah.
kicked out several times, during the relationship. I was kicked out of the house. I was supposed to call my home. So she would, if we were out and about, she'd say, "Oh, should we get this for our house?" And it was actually her house. And I'd say, "Well, it's your house." And she said, "No, it's your home as well." But I never knew which day would be the last one that I was spending in that home, because she
Yeah.
had the power to eject me at any
There
point
you
she
go.
wanted to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Then there was
Yeah.
the silent treatment. But when I used to pick her up on these, "Look, let's talk, because I can't cope with these silent treatments. It's not healthy. It's not good. It's not normal." And she'd say, "Oh, Brian, you know what I'm like when I get like this. I shut down. I shut down. I just need space." And
Yeah.
I realized over time that it actually isn't that. It's a form of control.
Yes,
It's
it
a
Of
is.
course it
form
is. Of course it
of
is. Yeah. Yeah.
you being
All of
able
it.
to
All
have
of
me
it.
where you want me. But then, of course,
Exactly.
within
Yeah.
within 3 weeks or 4 weeks, it was back to, like a click of a fingers. "Oh, babe, I love you so much," but never any mention of never, "Do
Just
you want to sit down and resolve what had gone on?" You
yeah.
didn't want
Just
to go
empty. It's just
over
empty words. Yeah.
and
Oh my
learn.
God. Yeah. You're so on the ball with it. This is
Yes.
exactly what they're like. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what I want to do is I'm going to I want to touch base on one last thing, and then we're going to start kind of wrapping her up. We're getting close to the end of
Yeah.
our time where we've
Yeah.
been on for
We've been
quite
a
a
while, but
while.
it's been great. Yeah.
Now,
Absolutely great.
my last question for you, Maria, and it's something I've been
Okay.
learning and healing from, and I've been digging so deep inside of myself, looking at things
Yeah.
like you've heard, a lot of people have heard me talk. I've learned that I have, some of the 4 core traumas, and there's actually more traumas inside that actually allowed me to move my boundaries. Guilt wounds, fear of abandonment, trust
Oh, huge.
issues,
Huge. Yeah.
all these things. And,
Yeah.
you know, would you agree that healing, going in and doing this so-called shadow work or childhood trauma work, would you agree that this would be a great front line to keeping yourself out of another relationship, such as a narcissistic abuse relationship or borderline personality disorder, which is something I notice is very heavily overlooked or misdiagnosed? A lot of people I know have borderline personality disorder, but I'm finding out that there's people that are full on narcissists that
I
have
think,
have
well, there's
been
2
labeled
questions.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think an awful lot of people are misdiagnosed with borderline personality disorder, who are actually people who should be diagnosed with
NPD.
NPD,
I agree.
narcissistic. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
let's not go into it now because that's another big
That
subject on its
we
own.
can do that
And
on
I've had
another
this
episode.
conversation many, many times, and I understand why there's confusion, but even psychiatrists, psychologists who, in my opinion, should know better, don't, because they are not exposed to it at the level that I am.
Or the manipulation that they bring in when they go to talk to a therapist sometimes will make it look like BPD. That's one thing I've
Oh,
I've noticed
absolutely,
too,
yeah, and there
because
are
they're
some
not fully
similarities. Yeah.
honest.
And just quickly, the very big difference is people with borderline personality disorder, and I have an ex, I lived with a guy who had BPD for 7 years. They do not lack empathy.
No,
They might be a bit self-absorbed, they might be a bit whatever, but they have empathy.
and have rage
And
spells
that's
as well, I noticed.
one of the key components of narcissistic personality disorder that is the most devastating one of all of it, is that
Yeah.
lack of empathy, which
Yes.
means they can scythe through people without a backward glance, with no remorse. But people with BPD, in my experience, and from what I've researched, do not lack empathy.
No.
So that alone is enough to make it completely different diagnosis.
Yes.
Anyway, so coming back to your question about inner child healing, shadow work, I think inner child healing is one of the most powerful things you can do, because everybody has a wounded inner child. Even if in an okay family and it wasn't toxic or abusive or narcissistic or alcoholics or whatever, there are still things that can happen. And I tell you who talks about this brilliantly. There's a fantastic interview on YouTube, Gabor Mate. He's huge in the world of recovery from addictions, but he has done a lot of work on childhood trauma. And I watched a video the other day with him. It's quite a long interview. It's about 2 hours. Really worth looking. And I think it's called something like How Kindness Causes Disease.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So go watch that after this, or when you have time. Just put in Gabor Mate interview kindness kills, and it will come up. Really, really interesting. And I'm also doing other studies myself and further trauma work certifications that I wanted to do. And you can be traumatized by something that from the outside looking in isn't particularly traumatic.
Yes.
And I'll give you a quick example, and I have shared this many times with people before, but there's a lady I worked with, and she had, when we got to working to find out, let's go back, where does this awful feeling come from? Where did this start? Where's the first time this occurred? This is what you do. She's gone, and she was like in her 60s, around my age when I did some work with her. And she's gone straight back to this incident that happened when she was about 7 or 8 in school. And during the recess, she drew a picture. She said, I drew this pretty picture with flowers, flowers for the teacher, and she left it on the teacher's desk. And then when the teacher came back, she wasn't taking any notice that this girl was still there. She saw this drawing on the table, and she held it up to the class and said, who drew this? And this little 8-year-old was too shy to say, I did it, miss, or put her hand up or anything. She didn't say anything. So nobody said anything. And the teacher took this drawing, screwed it up in her hand, and threw it into the trash can.
Yes.
Now, you just think, what a horrible thing for a teacher to do. But it was the first memory that this woman went straight back to. And it took her about 10 minutes because she was sobbing so hard with the memory of all the emotion that came up, with how she felt, how worthless she felt.
Yes.
And the teacher did that,
People don't realize that the sub-psyche is like it's like our subconscious is like a video recorder of emotions and traumas. We harbor that in us. Yeah. And when we harbor those unexpelled, undealt with emotions, they allow us to push those out and spill into our relationships, or to lower boundaries because we've been through it. We knew what it was like. We felt it. We don't want someone else to feel that way, and this is the doorway, folks, to letting yourself in to narcissistic or toxic abusive relationships. Absolutely. Is your over ability of empathizing. You will give a person time and time and time. I did it myself. I didn't give myself the love.
But the other thing as well, Ken, that's really important here is for people who have had toxic backgrounds, who have narcissistic parents, abusive childhoods like you did, that is going to make you way more susceptible to getting into another toxic relationship when you are, getting involved romantically with someone. And there's several reasons why. So Brian, you beautifully explained how the love bombing felt. So when you've grown up with that toxic environment, you haven't been validated and loved and supported the way a normal child would be. So you're craving that love, you're craving validation. So along comes the narcissist and they hit you up with this love bombing, and you're like, oh, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. It's euphoric, okay? So that's the first stage of it. That's how they hook you in the beginning, and there's all this love bombing and all this stuff going on. But then what happens is you start to see this toxic behavior, but you are subconsciously conditioned to accept that, expect it, because it's normal to you. It's familiar to you. So you don't think, well, hang on, that's not acceptable to me. I'm not putting up with that bullshit in this relationship. I'm out of here. No, you don't. And then, of course, like I said, there's the love bombing, devaluing, love bombing. So they keep coming back to you.
Yes.
So it's a bit like, it's very similar to, addiction, alcohol or heroin.
Yes.
It's like you get your little shot. then you're craving it, craving it, craving it. You're feeling absolutely wretched and dreadful. And why do I have to do this? But you need it. Then you get that shot. You feel high as a kite. You feel on top of the world again.
It's
Then you
actually,
crash.
it's
Very
actually,
similar.
it's actually chemical addiction to serotonin and what was the other?
Exactly.
It's
Dopamine,
serotonin and dopamine.
oxytocin,
Yes, you go.
serotonin, dopamine,
Yes,
oxytocin.
yeah, you go back and
absolutely.
forth, and your
And
body becomes addicted.
then when you get the downs, which you get regularly, the down spiral, your body is hitting you up, your brain's releasing cortisol. So you're
Yes,
constantly getting flooded with cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And this
yes.
is how you end up having physical illnesses.
And this is
Because your
what happened to
body is
me.
constantly,
I'm
Let-
actually
overloaded.
going on a heart monitor for the second time.
Oh, bless your heart. Bless your
And
heart.
on the first.
Bless your
Now,
heart.
the first time, and I'm not saying this is due to my necks. I don't know what it's due to, but I can tell you I'm suspicious. You know, and I have every right to be suspicious because I landed a large amount of stress in my past with my necks. So, but I don't want to take in, cut a whole bunch off short, too short, or let it go too long. If it's, Maria, what is some resources that you have on out there for people to reach out to you? I've also got some links in the description on these videos for everyone to reach out to, but I wanted to take and give Maria the chance to reach on out and, state what she needs to.
Yeah, the most important thing for anyone who might be watching who's not already in our guys group or women's group, I have a women's group, a guys group, a mixed group that's about co-parenting. So if people are watching this, let's say on your YouTube channel, I would say, get into a group that you're going to connect with people like you guys who are in that group and like me, who can really help support you.
Exactly.
That's the first thing.
And it is just on that note, Maria, it is a massive help to feel that support, that there are people out there. Again, the people that are just entering this phase of, I don't understand what's going on, to join a group like that and see others that are using terminology with descriptions, it makes you understand it, and it's a huge help. So
It makes a big difference when you get your feelings validated of what you've gone through, and you can relate with somebody else of what it is, and you're no longer wondering, was she a narcissist? Am I? You can go back and get that direction, and that direction, it helps so much. It really does.
And you guys are living proof because you found me, you found my group. That's how I know you guys, and you've both been in there. I think, Brian, you've been in since 2020, I think, and Ken, you've been in my group about a year. So you've seen, and you see the guys posting. You know how much it helps. So definitely, connect with us and join the groups. Okay.
Yeah.
I had a relation. Oh, sorry. You carry on and finish that one, Maria.
No, it's okay. Just very quickly, I was going to say, if you are still on the whole world of dating and you want to know how to protect yourself, go to Amazon and get my book, Top 50 Red Flags of Romantic Predators. It's only about, I don't know, $9.99, something like that. I always advise, if you can, get a therapist who knows what they're talking about and can help you very quickly to start cutting through this trauma, breaking the trauma bonds, dealing with all the childhood trauma, all of that. That's what I specialize in. So if you want to talk to me, I always offer a free 30-minute session. It usually goes longer. Connect with me if that's the case. I've also got, I mentioned earlier, it's not ready yet because I just recently switched over website hosting platforms. And I have a book that was never published on Amazon. I want to make it available as a free resource to anyone who comes to my group, comes to my videos, whatever. I will come back another time when I have that ready so we can share the link and I can talk people through what that book will do. So that will really help. It's the No BS Guide to Healing from Narcissistic Abuse in weeks, not years. So we'll talk about that on another one. So that's it for me today. That's been absolutely brilliant, guys. And we'll definitely do this again because I know you're planning on doing 3 times a week, aren't you?
Yes. I want to be able to reach out to men. I want to be able to reach out to women. And I want to take in, I think on my 3rd one, I'm going to start helping people with getting through that childhood trauma, that shadow work, finding self-love, rebuilding that confidence, the same things that we all lacked for so long that allowed us in these situations. But I wanted to say thank you, Maria, for joining. Same for you, Brian, and
pleasure.
for everybody out there, please, let's spread awareness. Please, if you see this video, don't be afraid. Share and understand there's a place for you to go to find help. If you look in the links in my descriptions, there's lots of different places. And if you follow my page, you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on YouTube. And soon you'll have me on TikTok and on Spotify. There is always help out there for you. You are not alone. There are brilliant people out here, both are survivors and people such as Maria that will help you and guide you through to help clear the fog. And Lord, if you are ever like I was at one point and you feel like you can't take enough, please reach out to a suicide hotline. There are so many people that I've learned that are in this that have attempted to take their life or have taken their life. Choose you first. You will and always were worth it. Thank you so much, folks. I really appreciate you joining. And until next time, have a great day.
Bye, guys. Take care. See you next time.